welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, MTN speaks out, denies any wrongdoing in the allegations of repatriating $13.92 billion out of Nigeria. Controversy trails proposed concessioning of 4 airports in the country at the House of Representatives, public hearing on rescuing Nigeria's aviation industry. Newly crowned monarch of ancient Benin Kingdom receives staff of office with several top dignitaries in attendance. And Republican candidate Donald Trump remains adamant, says he'll accept the results of the U.S. presidential election only if he wins. On Business News tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria disburses money to entrepreneurs under its Youth Development Program.
And on sports news tonight, Barcelona striker Luis Suarez wins Golden Shoe Award after emerging as leading scorer in Europe last season.
And from Abuja, I'm Linda Akibe. Nigeria's former president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, advocates independent and fair electoral process as reflection of the people's will.
We begin from Abuja, where telecommunications giant MTN has denied claims that the company repatriated $13.92 billion out of the country between 2006 and 2016. MTN chairman Mr. Pascal Dozier made this clarification during a public hearing by the Senate over allegations that the company and some banks connived to repatriate the funds. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
It's the first day of an investigative hearing by the Senate Committee on Banking over some weighty allegations leveled against the mobile telecommunication network MTN, the Minister of Trade and Investment, and some commercial banks in Nigeria. A federal lawmaker, Senator Dino Melaye, accused the mobile telecommunication company MTN of conniving with some banks and the Minister of Trade and Investment to illegally repatriate $13.92 billion, and that MTN did not request for a certificate of capital importation from its bankers, Standard Chartered Bank, within the regulatory period of 24 hours of the inflow. The Minister of Trade and Investment was scheduled to give his testimony on the allegations leveled against him, but he left immediately after the opening ceremony to the annoyance of the committee.
The Honorable Minister, I'm aware that he walked in just like 2 minutes before we walked in because of the session in the plenary. He has earlier written, and immediately he walked in, he sent me a note that he wants to leave for another important assignment at 2 p.m. I now wrote back to him that if he leaves, he will be presumed to be absent for today's session.
That out of the way, the Chief Executive Officer of MTN gives his testimony. He explains why MTN did not request for a certificate of capital importation from his bankers within the 24 hours regulatory period.
However, I think there's something you do need to understand, that the 24-hour rule is not in all cases practical. It is almost impossible to comply with it, and in our particular case, this was definitely the issue.
But the chairman, MTN Nigeria, denies any wrongdoing by the company.
Now let me talk about the issuance of the certificate of capital importation. The allegations are completely false. MTN complied with extant laws and regulations. Requests for CCIs are a continuing event made as and when brought in.
Senator Dino Melaye insists that MTN engaged in financial impropriety.
The law is straight, that it said 24 hours. Meanwhile, CCI was raised 5 years after.
The committee would be analyzing the documents submitted by all the concerned parties in the next few days. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And staying with the National Assembly, where federal lawmakers have been looking into ways of reviving the nation's aviation sector. At the House of Representatives, controversy continues to trail the proposed concessioning of 4 airports in the country as participants at the public hearing into how to rescue the aviation sector could not agree on the best model to adopt. At the Senate, however, lawmakers resolved to support efforts being made by the federal government to address the challenges in the industry. Our correspondent Lanre Lasisi reports.
The current challenges facing the Nigerian aviation sector has continued to worry industry players. The situation is also of concern to both arms of the National Assembly. In the Senate, a motion was considered on the matter.
The Senate therefore notes also that government must begin to put in place a more lasting and sustainable program of intervention and policy direction that will put the industry back in the course of growth.
The Senate resolved to support the steps being taken by the executive to intervene in the current challenges being faced by the aviation industry. Meanwhile, the public hearing by the House Committee on Aviation on the need to rescue the airline industry from collapse continued with more presentation by industry players. The day's session tried to look at a previous concession in the aviation sector that is now the focus of a legal tussle.
FAN has shown complete disregard for constituted authority, for the laws of Nigeria, and I must say, if aviation industry is in any difficulty today, it's because of the cavalier attitude of FAN to rules and processes.
I mean, FAN is a party to the agreement, because we're talking of airport management, airport concession, and FAN was the one that executed this agreement along with the Honorable Minister of Aviation. And there is no way that issues that would be discussed pertaining to FAN will be discussed on a committee without FAN being represented on that committee. So as far as the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria is concerned, that committee was constituted without her being represented.
I keep saying, and that is why we are very worried on the issue of concessioning. If you don't resolve these issues that are on ground, they will go the same way, sign agreements and mortgage our future.
The committee also heard from the Central Bank of Nigeria on the issue of foreign exchange for the sector.
The CBN intervened in the market yesterday to the tune of 313.9 million. And out of this total value, 69.164 million, which is 31.91% of the total value, went to the aviation industry.
The committee is asking the bank to put in place a special exchange rate for the aviation sector. At the end of the public hearing, the committee is expected to present its recommendations to the House. Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
There was some cheery news on the nation's economy this week. First, the International Monetary Fund ranked Nigeria as the biggest economy in Africa, ahead of South Africa and Egypt. Also, Fitch Ratings gave some positive outlook for the nation's economy. Our next report takes a look at these latest developments and their impact on the nation's quest to overcome its current economic challenges.
Positive economic reports about Nigeria hit the news wire in the last 24 hours. First, the October edition of World Economic Outlook, published by International Monetary Fund, says Nigeria is Africa's largest economy at $415 billion by the size of its gross domestic product. The report places South Africa a distant second at $280.3 billion. In the third place was Algeria at $163.3 billion, as no data was available for Egypt. The second news was from Fitch Ratings. The agency forecast Nigeria's economic growth at 2.6% in 2017. Fitch believes the domestic economy will bounce back next year, but with downside risk if dollar liquidity persists. The new IMF report that ranks Nigeria's GDP size above South Africa will be a bit surprising, considering the present recession the country faces. 2 months ago, the South African economy reportedly outpaces Nigeria as the Naira falls drastically and the South African Rand climbs against the US dollar. That ranking was decried by Nigerian-born Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote.
Well, I was listening to the news saying that Nigeria has actually been displaced by South Africa to be number one in Africa in terms of economy, size of economy. Personally, Your Excellency, I don't believe in those numbers. It was something that was done just to embarrass us, but we don't give up.
The latest GDP ranking and outlook on 2017 growth seems to confirm the optimism of members of President Buhari's administration that the economy is on the path to recovery in 2017. In particular, the Finance Minister, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, had indicated that the ongoing fiscal spending and retooling government spending will yield positive reports in the medium term.
Well, the message is that Nigeria is getting out of the trouble that it has been in, and we're turning things around. And I think everybody is united. Everybody that was here today represented the 36 states of Nigeria. And this recovery will be driven from the states, from the local governments. It's people starting businesses, companies opening up. There are no federal people. Everybody lives in a state. So having everybody together, working in the same direction is very important.